Hey there, beautiful souls. Welcome back to BookFuel, the space where we dive into timeless books and draw out the kind of wisdom that helps us grow, evolve, and reconnect with our truest selves. Let me tell you a story about a man, not just any man, but someone who carried a colossal will within him. And yet, even with that fire burning inside, he was mocked by his own mother. She told him that the books he poured his soul into were only good for wrapping tobacco. But here's the thing, he was brilliant, fiercely independent. From a young age, he had the kind of mind that didn't just look at the world, it saw through it. He asked the deeper questions. He thought in layers. In his early years, he completed a work that would later be hailed as a philosophical masterpiece, The World as Will and Representation. But life didn't reward him for his genius, not at first. For decades, his books were ignored. His peers dismissed him. His voice, his insights were drowned out by envy and indifference. It wasn't until he was over 60 years old that a British critic finally discovered his work, and the world began to pay attention. The man who had lived in the shadows for over 6 decades suddenly became known across continents. That man was Arthur Schopenhauer, the great German philosopher whose thinking influenced legends like Nietzsche, Wagner, Freud, and even Einstein. People called him the philosopher of pessimism, but if you really sit with his words, you'll realize he wasn't promoting despair. He was offering clarity. He didn't romanticize life. He didn't sugarcoat the human experience. He looked straight into the chaos and saw the beauty within the struggle. And still, he chose to aim for the light. Not in blind hope, but with a deep belief that understanding the darkness is the only way to walk through it consciously. In his final work, The Wisdom of Life, Schopenhauer talks about happiness, not as something to chase, but as something to uncover by shedding suffering. He flips the script. Don't pursue happiness. Just remove what causes pain. That might sound simple. It's not. Because that path, the one that leads to genuine peace, it's narrow, it's quiet. It's not paved with applause or bright lights. It's for those who are ready to unplug from the noise, detach from the high of superficial pleasure, and sit with what's real. Though this book was written in the 19th century, its message couldn't feel more relevant. Look around today. People are using parties, status updates, and consumption to mask a profound emptiness. Socializing becomes a substitute for connection. Shopping becomes a bandage for the soul. It's not judgment, it's observation. And Schopenhauer, in his quiet brilliance, puts it this way: the more a man has in himself, the less he will need from the outside world. That line hits differently in a world where we're constantly being told we're not enough unless we're seen, liked, validated. But maybe real freedom, real fulfillment, comes not from being more visible, but from being more whole. The ones who cultivate that richness within don't need to conform. They don't have to shrink to fit in or twist themselves to be liked. They don't trade their authenticity for approval. And yes, that often makes them feel different, maybe even difficult, maybe even lonely. But perhaps it's those very people, the ones who walk alone, who enjoy solitude, who aren't afraid of silence, that hold the real keys to happiness. Maybe the weird ones are simply ahead of their time. Today, I want to share with you a reflection titled, "The richer the inner world, the harder it is to fit in," inspired by the timeless philosophical work, The Wisdom of Life by Arthur Schopenhauer. Part 1. You will suffer forever if you don't recognize the pendulum paradox. Let's begin with a paradox, one that, if left unseen, may quietly fuel your suffering. Schopenhauer once said that human happiness has 2 eternal enemies, pain and boredom. And if you pay attention, you'll see it's true. Life often resembles a pendulum, swinging relentlessly between 2 extremes, suffering and monotony. It's either the sting of not having enough or the dull ache of having too much, and yet feeling nothing at all. Poverty gives rise to pain. Prosperity often leads to boredom. And most people, without even realizing it, are trapped in that rhythm, constantly swinging back and forth. On one end is the anxiety of scarcity, the struggle for money, for recognition, for love. On the other end is the quiet despair of excess, The moment when you finally have what you thought you wanted, but can't find meaning in it. The pendulum never rests in the middle. In Schopenhauer's view, this pendulum symbolizes our desires, human longing itself. When we haven't achieved what we want, we burn with restlessness. But once we finally get it, we're often left cold, empty, and wondering, now what? He said it simply: we desire what we don't have and grow tired of what we do. Fast forward to today, and the swing of that pendulum is only getting faster and more addictive. Why? Because now dopamine is in the driver's seat. When we crave a goal, our brain rewards us with dopamine, the chemical of anticipation. We feel excited, motivated, alive. But the moment we reach that goal, dopamine crashes. And what do? We look for the next hit, a new desire, a new pursuit, a new reason to chase. And so the cycle repeats endlessly. Take a moment and ask yourself, that item you were so thrilled to buy, how long did the joy last? How quickly did the thrill fade after the unboxing, the first use, the first compliment? Modern life, in this way, turns many of us into a modern Tantalus, the tragic figure from Greek mythology, cursed to stand in a pool of crystal clear water, but never able to drink it. Every time he reaches down, the water recedes. We're reaching, always reaching, but fulfillment stays just out of reach. Now let's be honest. We do need money and material things to survive in today's world. No one is denying that. But we must also recognize a fundamental truth. Material wealth and lasting happiness do not increase in equal measure. Studies in social psychology have shown this clearly. When someone's income goes from $0 to $1,000, their quality of life improves drastically. But from $1,000 to $100,000, even though the number increases 100 times, the actual increase in happiness is minimal. Once our basic needs are met, more doesn't equal better. More just becomes more, like pouring water into a bottomless cup. This is what modern psychology calls the treadmill effect. We think we're moving forward, but emotionally, we're staying in place. Science confirms it. When we achieve big milestones like buying a house or getting promoted, we feel a temporary high, and then we return to our emotional baseline. Desire, in the end, doesn't bring happiness, it steals it. And even when we understand this intellectually, we often don't stop to ask, am I living like a pendulum, swinging endlessly between lack and excess, never truly grounded? Part 2, the price of going against the flow. Choosing inner abundance instead of chasing external wealth. So, which side of the pendulum are you leaning toward, scarcity or excess? If you're honest, you'll probably find traces of both in yourself. Most of us do. Life for many feels like an endless loop, a cycle of grasping and letting go, of desire and disappointment, of chasing and collapsing. Schopenhauer saw this clearly way back in the 19th century, and like many great thinkers, he pointed to one simple truth. As long as you live like a pendulum, you will never truly be at peace. The solution, he suggests, is not to run faster toward your next desire, but to step off the track altogether. Not to swing with the world's momentum, but to begin the quiet work of turning inward and cultivating a life rich in depth, awareness, and meaning. But let's be clear, that path comes with a cost. When you choose to invest in your inner world instead of chasing outer wealth or status, people may start to see you as difficult, odd, aloof, even antisocial. Schopenhauer put it plainly. The more inner wealth a person has, the less they depend on the outer world, the less others affect them. And so, those who possess a deep spiritual or intellectual life often find it harder to blend in. Society, after all, runs on shared scripts, from how we speak, to what we value, to how we define success. But when you begin living from your own script, everything changes. You stop seeking your worth in someone else's approval. You find the courage to be different, to think differently, to live differently, and to defend the values that matter most to you. You begin to say no. No to meaningless meetups, no to performative small talk, no to toxic connections, no to working just for money or status, no to following trends that don't align with your soul. And yes, all of this may make you look like the weird one. To others, you might seem distant, arrogant, or even like someone who's given up. But let's be honest, you haven't given up. You've simply grown out of what no longer fits. You don't go out for the sake of going out. You don't say yes just to avoid judgment. You're not avoiding people out of bitterness. You're simply protecting your time and energy for things that matter more. Reading, meditating, writing, creating. You no longer chase achievements for the sake of competition. You don't obsess over KPIs and promotions, not because you're lazy, but because you're focused on doing work that feels aligned with your soul. And yes, this kind of clarity might cost you a few surface-level connections, but in exchange, you begin to build something far more valuable: authentic relationships with others and with yourself. Schopenhauer is living proof of this. Born into one of Europe's wealthiest merchant families, he was raised in luxury and ease. Some believed his rejection of materialism came from privilege, that he could afford to think that way. But the truth is, he never denied the value of money. He admitted, with sharp honesty, that wealth can liberate us from survival mode. But beyond that, he said, money becomes mere decoration for the ego. His inheritance gave him the freedom to think, to write, and to study without concern for survival. But rather than becoming the perfect heir his family expected, he turned inward and chose to write about the essence of human life. Not an easy path, a lonely one. But it was the path his soul recognized. Now imagine this. Someone offers you $4 million, but in exchange you must work a job you dislike for the rest of your life. Would you take it? Your answer depends entirely on how you define true wealth. For Schopenhauer, material wealth is just another goal in the pendulum swing, one that rarely delivers what it promises. True richness, he believed, comes from the abundance of the inner world. Part 3. How can you truly live a life of inner abundance? In today's world, society tends to glorify sociability. Being sociable is seen as being friendly, open, easy to talk to, a good person in the eyes of many. But Schopenhauer offered a quiet warning. If you immerse yourself too deeply in the crowd, you may lose your ability to be at peace with yourself. Fitting in is not the same as being in harmony. And when fitting in lacks authenticity, it becomes a performance. A kind of emotional mimicry where you smile when you don't mean it, speak words that don't feel true, maintain relationships that serve no purpose beyond convenience or gain. In time, you may even find yourself trading your values just to be liked. Kindness is not the same as flattery. True kindness is smiling warmly at a street cleaner, while saying no, unapologetically, to a dinner invitation from someone corrupt. It's listening deeply to a stranger's story while never pretending to agree with something that goes against your conscience. Schopenhauer believed that social interaction is essential, but only if it's born from honesty, from a meeting of two genuine souls. That, to him, was what real connection meant. And to those who live with a rich inner life, that is what true sociability feels like: quiet, intentional, and sincere. His philosophy teaches us that to live wisely is to waltz with the world, to know when to move forward, when to step back, when to spin, and when to still, all while never losing the rhythm of your own heart. People with rich inner worlds don't reject society. They simply redefine how they engage with it, beginning with a more honest relationship to themselves. No matter what you're facing, stress, pain, confusion, remember this: being gentle and honest with yourself is the beginning of everything. So how do we build a richer life from within? Schopenhauer said that once we start nourishing our inner lives, our desires begin to simplify. We no longer chase what we don't need. We stop getting tangled in the noise. Think of a baby in its mother's arms. It only needs milk and sleep to smile with peace. But adults, we get lost in a forest of endless wants. If you want to stop running after empty desires, the first step is to release the fears of the future and regrets of the past. Thoughts like, why didn't I take that chance back then? What if I can't afford a house in the future? These only spiral you further into anxiety. We must learn to live, as Schopenhauer wrote, as though the things we fear may never come to pass. Don't let tomorrow and yesterday steal the breath of today. He wasn't asking us to reject all material things. He simply pointed out that true freedom begins when we can clearly tell the difference between a real need and a hollow craving. Beyond that line, everything else is just a game society plays. Let material things serve your inner life, not rule over it. The next step? Know what you're here to do. Even as a young man, Schopenhauer felt a quiet certainty in his calling. He once said that when a person senses what they're meant to do, deeply, silently, they begin to live like a honeybee, devoted, focused, slowly building the architecture of their destiny. But to know that kind of clarity, we must cultivate knowledge, self-awareness, and inner discipline. In his early academic years, Schopenhauer studied across disciplines: physics, biology, botany, anthropology, law. His notebooks were filled with questions, critiques, bold thoughts, signs of a mind unwilling to settle for surface answers. He also mastered 7 languages, which gave him direct access to the deepest, oldest texts. For him, books weren't just information. They were lifelines, companions, sacred conversations across time. He once said, "A person who doesn't read lives only one life, but a reader lives hundreds." It was this constant self-education and deep reflection that helped Schopenhauer understand who he was and what he was here to do. And here's the truth. Only when you understand yourself can you truly be free. Final words, an important message at the end. One essential element in the journey toward a richer inner life is something we often resist: creative solitude. Schopenhauer is often called the father of philosophical solitude, not because he glorified isolation, but because he recognized something simple yet profound. Only in the stillness of solitude can the mind become quiet enough to create, to reflect, and to understand the deeper truths of life. He once wrote, "Either be alone or be ordinary." For him, we are faced with a choice: either dare to be alone long enough to cultivate wisdom, or dissolve into the crowd and become a blurred version of everyone else. But this kind of solitude is not loneliness. It's not escapism. It's not bitterness. It is a conscious step away from the noise, a deliberate act of listening inward. Schopenhauer spent most of his life alone in his study, reading, writing, and engaging in silent conversation with great minds through the pages of books. It was in those quiet hours that he came face to face with the nature of desire, the absurdity of human existence, and eventually he gave the world timeless works of philosophy that still echo today. So I want to say this to you gently once more. Let solitude hold you. Don't fear being alone. Take time to breathe, to slow down, to return to yourself. In the stillness, your inner world begins to grow, and in that richness, you'll discover powers within you that the outer world can never give. Alongside stillness, Schopenhauer emphasized another truth, one that's often overlooked in spiritual circles. Health is the foundation of all happiness. He once wrote, "A healthy beggar is happier than a sick king." In his writings, he called it the greatest foolishness, to sacrifice your health for anything else, to work, to earn, to achieve status, only to spend it all later trying to buy back what was lost. So pause and ask yourself, are you working today so you can afford the medicine tomorrow? Are you becoming a slave to your job, only to spend your paycheck trying to repair your exhausted body? Look closely at the smallest habits. How long have you been sitting today without moving? Did you stay up late scrolling? Have you skipped sunlight, skipped breath, skipped nourishment? Schopenhauer reminded us, youth is for learning wisdom. Old age is for living it. But sadly, many confuse the two, destroying their health while they're young in pursuit of understanding, only to realize too late that without health, everything else becomes illusion. Without a healthy body, our achievements are like flowers in water or the moon in a mirror, beautiful but unreachable. This is why he believed that to live richly from the inside, we must first inhabit a body that is well. Only when the body is in balance can the mind shine with clarity. In the end, what Schopenhauer left behind was not doctrine, but a map of the soul, one that invites each of us to find ourselves in its quiet corners. He didn't promise heaven. He didn't ask us to renounce everything. He simply reminded us of a forgotten truth. Happiness doesn't come from adding more. It comes from letting go. Today, in a world that's too loud, in a world where social media thrives on showmanship, in a world where people chase goal after goal and forget who they are, his philosophy becomes a kind of awakening bell, a gentle invitation to return, to come home to ourselves, to real values, to a life of presence, simplicity, sincerity, and gratitude. You may not blend in with the world, but you can still feel in harmony with the sky above you, the earth beneath you, and the quiet souls walking beside you. You may not get applause. You may never go viral, but you can live truthfully, one day at a time. Thank you for walking with me to the end of this journey. If these words spoke to something inside you, if they felt needed, I invite you to share them with someone else who's also searching for depth. Because each awakened soul makes this world a little lighter. One less person chasing illusions, one more person brave enough to live honestly.